Kendall Kaut, SicEm365.com, joins us now, and this Baylor Athletics segment is brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, Buick GMC Cadillac, people you can count on. And Kendall, Baylor's had seemingly more questions than answers when it comes to what the 2023 roster is going to look like. And as we've come now here to June 1st, and now that the May 31st deadline is passed on staying in the NBA draft or not, they've got another big one, and that Adam Flagler not coming back wasn't expected to. I don't think by the staff at all. I don't think anybody was holding out hope for him because he's 23 years old, ready to go on with his professional career wherever that may be. But they need to do some things in the transfer portal. RayJ Dennis really kind of solidifies who they're going to be guard-oriented going forward, doesn't he?
He does, Paul. RayJ, an incredible offensive player, the MAC player of the year last season, got his three-point percentage up from 31% to 36% last year on 58 more attempts. So really good offensive numbers. Ken Pom, big MAC player of the year last year as well, Paul. So really good offensive player you can plug and play and count on to be a 15-plus point per game scorer.
Where does he kind of fit in the overall puzzle now, Kendall? Where are we? You got the Adam Flagler decision that's official. We know Jalen Bridges is not necessarily returning to Baylor, but he's not going to be in the NBA draft. So that leads maybe back to Waco, maybe to semi-pro or something along those lines. With the addition of RayJ Dennis, how do you view this roster at the moment?
As you mentioned, Craig, the big deal going forward will be, does Jalen Bridges come back? I get the sense that probably has about a week or so left. With realignment, we always think, is today or is it a week or so? So I'm always cognizant of trying to be too quick with my timeline. So I think within about a week, we'll know with Jalen Bridges. I expect he'll elect to return ultimately. We'll see what he decides to do. I know Baylor's going to have good NIL opportunities for him as they've been really on top of the ball lately compared to maybe where they were even a year ago. So I would expect him to come back. If he does not, we'll find out, does Baylor take Grant Nelson from North Dakota State, or do they take the kid from Tennessee, Oliver N., I'm not sure, or Olivier N., I'm not sure how to pronounce the kid's last name, but had a good year at Tennessee as well. They'll need to get somebody who can plug and play and be an offensive force. The big question for me next year, Craig, is how good can Baylor be as a three-point shooting team? So electric from the perimeter with Keontae George, LJ Cryer, and Adam Flagler last season. I think there'll be a big question mark about whether Baylor's guards can shoot to be as effective as they need to be offensively, be a championship caliber program.
Is this team one that you kind of have to look at not 2023, but 2024 is where if they can keep the nucleus, those guys who have eligibility together, that's where they can really make hay, because they're going to be relying on Jacoby Walter, who's a true freshman and very good, a five-star player, and early reports on him are pretty good, Kendall, as you know, but that's still a lot to rely on a freshman to get you to the mountaintop. Texas is going to be very good. Kansas is going to be very good. Houston's going to be very good. Where do you see them fitting in with their roster based on those teams?
Right, Paul, if I had to rank the Big 12 currently, which you're asking me to do, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
I have Baylor number 4 in the conference. I think KU is clearly the best team in the league with Hunter Dickinson, Kevin McCullough's return. KJ Adams, I think, will be a great defender at the 4, and DeJuan Harris is an elite point guard both defensively and in terms of how he creates. I think Texas, on paper right now, better than Baylor. Tyrese Hunter comes back. They get a big addition from the NBA draft with Dylan Mitchell deciding to come back to school. And then Max Abmas is one of the best scorers last season. At Oral Roberts, that's a good team. And I think Houston's still a little better than Baylor, obviously. Former Bear LJ Cryer elects to return to his hometown and play for the Cougars. So I think those three teams are better on paper. I think Baylor slots in at the 4 spot. UConn won the title last year as the 4 seed. So it's not a lot of the realm of possibility if you're in that number 4, number 5 seed range that you can win a national championship, just a lot harder. And so I think Baylor's championship opportunity next year, I don't quite see it right now for the Bears. I know there are people on staff that feel like this team defensively, with some schematic changes they'll make, can be so much better that'll make up for the decline they'll make inevitably offensively, losing Keontae George, Flags, and LJ Cryer. But I think 2024 looks more like a championship contending team to me, especially if Trey Johnson elects to come to Waco.
Based on just kind of the review of things with the season now so far in the rear view, it seems like it was ages ago at this point. But, with the benefit of hindsight, what do you think the staff has kind of zeroed in on as far as why some things, particularly defense, wasn't maybe what they thought it was cracked up to be entering last year?
Craig, I think they looked at scheme and probably thought some of their guys weren't real long. LJ Cryer, great offensive player, not a real lengthy guy. Flag measured a little bit shorter at the combine, not a ton of length. Keontae George, great offensive player, not a lockdown defender. And then Flo Thamba didn't have the best fifth year that he could have had on campus, as I'm sure so many people that take a fifth year in college could attest that that's a tough thing, I'm sure, to do. And then Jonathan Chachua was limited laterally. So the hope is that Everyday John is back laterally, that what you add from a VCU transfer gives you a great defensive player, that those that RayJ Davis can play with the 6'7" wingspan, as Aaron Ashley Hahn just noted, means the defense gets better. And on top of that, I think what Baylor hopes is that some schematic changes they can make, whether they stay no middle, whether they make some adjustments, they'll have their foreign tour to France. And I think you look back at that 2020 season, so many guys, Craig, mentioned to me when I talked to Davion Mitchell or Jared Butler or Mark Vidal, that trip to Italy they took before that season really helped them grow as people and helped them develop a culture. There have been some studies that have been done that say, hey, when teams take foreign tours, they tend to overperform their preseason expectations. So I think Baylor's very optimistic about what that foreign tour could do, because I think they thought the culture maybe slipped a little bit last season.
Yeah, and we actually, Bill Peterson spoke at the Academic All-Stars a couple weeks ago. He mentioned that to me as something that they were looking forward to, because it's you essentially, it's not even about the basketball. They hardly play basketball. It's just about the team building.
I think that's exactly right, Paul. Baylor's going to have some basketball opportunities. They'll play 3 or 4 games. I had it mentioned to me by somebody today that I talked to in the program of, hey, we went on our foreign tour. We implemented a new defense. It was awful on the foreign tour. Came back, lost to Washington that they had no business losing to, and then suddenly they won 23 straight games. So it'll be a process for them to get a new scheme or a new system if they would like to go that route. But I wouldn't expect the defense to play schematically exactly the same way it played last season, even if they stick no middle for some degree. And the personnel is going to be so different that it'll take, I think, a little bit of time. But I think Baylor can legitimately say this next season, even if they're not as good as they've been in the 20, 21, or 22 seasons, which is an unrealistic expectation, I think, for this collection of guys, they'll at least be peaking at the end of the year, as opposed to last season when it felt like Baylor's best basketball maybe played in December or January.
So, Kendall, going back to Adam Flagler and the contributions he made to the program, you had a tweet yesterday, or I guess about a day ago, that was talking about, where he fits in the all-time rankings, and I don't think you've followed up. If you did, I didn't see it on exactly where he would fit in that pecking order, but can you just kind of give a recap of, the place he's left, post what he did at Baylor, just the niche that he carved out, I guess, is a better way to put it. Can you kind of put into words the meaning that Adam Flagler had for Baylor basketball?
He had an absolutely phenomenal career in Waco, Craig. I think he was the best player on last year's team. James Akinjo got the All-Big 12 first team honor. Flags got the second one. But I think if you talk to most people in the program, they thought that Flags was the best player on that team. I would agree with that. Clearly was the best player last year as well. So you have 2 straight seasons where he's the best player, including on a number 1 seed, and then this past season on a team that was the number 9 overall team entering the NCAA tournament. He's the shot against Gonzaga that is the dagger when Baylor's up 13. Vidal gets the block. Jared Butler passes it ahead on the wing, hits the 3. And I talked to multiple people that said, in that moment, there was no doubt luck for us that we were going to win the national championship. In my all-time list, I have Flagler number 5 in the Scott Drew era. I think Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell, Jonathan Motley, and Lacerius Dunn as the former Big 12 all-time leading scorer rank higher than Flags does for me. I think you'd make a case maybe he should be number 4. But I think those 3 with Motley, Butler, Mitchell, and I think certainly Dunn before his senior season maybe left a little bit of a bitter taste in some people's mouths, but I think time is rectified. That puts him at 5 for me. But ranking, Maceo Teague, Torian Prince, Corey Jefferson, Mark Vidal, so many other guys who put on a Baylor uniform gets very tough in that range. Pierre Jackson as well. But I think for me, with what he did with winning, that should be the ultimate question. It's still so tough to analyze basketball, analytics, watching the game. Ultimately, it comes down to, did you win? And Adam Flagler was a consistent winner. And when he leaves Baylor, I think you can honestly say he was a proven winner, and he just won so many games. He left the program in a better shape than he found it in. And that's all you can really ask for the amount of time he spent in Waco. And it was a great time for Baylor and a great time for him as well.
Do you put him top 5 Scott Drew players all time?
I do, Paul. I think he's number 5 for me. I think I've viewed Maceo Teague more highly than I did before, just because I think we really underrated how valuable his defense was, because we all knew how good Mark was, how good Davion was defensively, and the respect Jared got for blocking shots his junior season. But I think Maceo Teague has a case to be number 5, but I put Adam number 5 because he had to be the lead dog his last year on campus, and the year before I thought he was Baylor's best player too. So for me, Adam Flagler, number 5 Scott Drew player of all time.
Kendall, I think we've covered a lot of the bases, but you mentioned a realignment there at the very beginning. I know it's been a crazy thing, especially on our boards and all of that, but would just love your general thoughts on not necessarily all of the rumors and innuendo and all those things, but what do you think about a commissioner who has a focus, obviously, on basketball, feels like he can maximize it a bit more. And what do you think when you hear rumors about, the potential of adding a Gonzaga or adding a UConn, for example, and some of the options that might be on the table?
I'm intrigued by it, Craig. The thing that starts to worry me, though, is, okay, if Baylor's going to be in a conference, or the Big 12 is going to suddenly have possibly Colorado, Arizona State, Utah, Connecticut, Gonzaga. I mean, is it really a conference if you have 18 teams playing basketball? I guess you play everybody once, but it feels more like a scheduling alliance than anything that's really wieldly at that point. But I do get it. It'd be fun to play Gonzaga every season. It'd be fun to play Connecticut every season if you're Baylor. It's good to see all these teams. But there is some numbers. I think you hit the top end range and say, is this worth it? I think if you're the Big 12, you feel like, look, Gonzaga and Connecticut should be there on the basketball side. Those can wait. I think it's incumbent upon the Big 12 to see and say, is Colorado coming? Is Arizona coming? And if those two schools come, you can then reassess, is Arizona State as a football member and a basketball member going to come? Is that worth more value? Would Oregon and Washington come for a second? So I like the possibility of Gonzaga as a basketball-only member. I think I floated this a long time ago before I'd even heard about it. But with the possibility of getting those 4 Pac-12 schools, whether that happens or not, who knows? I think you can wait a little bit on Gonzaga. I think you can wait a little bit on UConn. I'd like it if that were 14 with those schools. But I'm really starting to get maybe a little bit of ick about an 18-team conference if it has all those schools in it.
Yeah, that would be unwieldy.
Yeah, I think, if anything, the likelihood of 4 from the Pac is probably the lowest percentage. So maybe it could all even out. But I'm with you. It's interesting. I'm glad I asked you that because just yesterday I was looking at just conference rankings, and I was like, golly, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to be at 16 teams. And I was just thinking about how crazy that's going to be. And you're right. Like, at some point, because I had the same thought, I was like, they're practically like an entire league, by themselves at this stage. So, yeah, what's too many to where you're not even what could be considered a conference anymore? You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree completely on that, Craig. And the way I view this, too, is, those same schools that were excited about adding Texas and OU, if they can betray a 100-year rivalry in Baylor, if they can betray TCU like they've done before, they'll have no trouble betraying Mississippi State someday and telling Rutgers you didn't belong in the Big Ten in the first place. So once you start letting 16 or 18 teams in your league, you got to wonder how long will you be in a 16 or 18 team league. The TV deals come up eventually. I just don't think those are the kind of numbers that they sign long-term deals with. If you go to the market again, I don't think there'll be an 18-team league for long if the Big 12 goes that route. Especially think the SEC's days of a 16-team league, the Big 10 days of the 16-team league are not going to be long either. I don't expect Ohio State and Michigan are going to want to keep playing Wisconsin when they can play USC, Alabama, Auburn, and Texas. So I think we're headed to a world where college sports becomes the worst version of the pros, but what can you do? Enjoy the time we have for right now. And this is, I think, kind of the last of the golden era of college football, because I think college basketball is still in a great place, but college football to me just gets seedier and seedier every day with how the money dictates everything for these conferences.
Kendall, that was very fatalistic.
No, he's right. I mean, that's
right.
what a lot of people feel that way. Yeah, a lot of people are worried about that. So, yeah, absolutely.
It was Paul and Craig, and, I've been somebody who said I want to see the kids get paid. I think there's got to be a structure where the player movement isn't what it is, where the salaries make a little bit more sense for what happens for the players, and they know what they're actually getting money from. And then we've got to get to a world where UCLA Rutgers is not going to be prime time on NBC in November. But, for now, the finest of New Jersey, and I guess the most attractive in California, can gather around their television sets and watch 7 and 5 programs play.
Right. Hey, Rutgers claims New York City, apparently. So yeah,
that was the funniest thing of all time.
Right, yeah.
Kendall Kaut, SicEm365.com. Kendall, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, fellas.
There's Kendall. Yeah, read his stuff on SicEm365.com. If you're not a premium member, you can do that.